be here this morning with you, and I know as being right in the place where Lucas is, week to week, not in the sick bed right now, but week to week, that there is a flurry of phone calls that need to happen as you make that decision on Sunday morning. Man, I'm just not able to come and do my thing this morning and preach as I would love to do. And so we do pray for him and for Kirsten and for baby Pinkard as they get better. But so with all those phone calls that have to go on, and I know that I've just been so impressed this morning already as talking to people and knowing the gaps that have to be filled in, the people who have to come in and do what is normally done by others here this morning. I'm impressed that the church is able to do that, and that you all have been empowered to do those things. You were equipped to do those things, and you know that. And so I'm so happy to know that God has done that in this church, and that your pastor has led well. And so I thank you for that this morning. So as Lucas was making phone calls this morning, though, the first one, I don't know whether to say dumb or brave enough to pick up the phone first, was going to be the one who was going to preach, right? And so about 8 o'clock this morning, I'm on a Zoom call. It's a fellowship call I have. They have it every Sunday morning with some men. And so I was on that call, and I see Lucas Pinkard pop up on my phone. And it's like getting a call from the principal. Oh, no. There was no other reason Lucas would be calling me at 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning. But I told him, feel better. I have no idea what we're going to preach on, but God will use this. And so I am convinced that this is God's appointed hour for me to be here. This is God's appointed hour for you to be here. So let's do it, and let's hear what God has laid out for us. I will say that it's almost like y'all knew I was coming because of the songs that we sang. Many they're like in my top 10. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate the Lord. Danley's doing a rah-rah back there, like, thank you, sir. But, well, I want you to turn with me to Matthew chapter 14, and we're going to look at this very familiar story, I think, but hopefully we can take something new away from it. I want you to focus today on a couple of things, but as we get into the story here, we'll be starting in verse 22, but think about your decision making in life. Think about the ways that you come about deciding what to do with any given situation. Now, I was foolish enough in my mid-20s to think, well, any day now this is going to end and I won't have to worry about this stuff anymore, how to make decisions in a godly way, right? Not so. That was a big lie. There are always these major decisions that have to be made. How does this dollar get spent? Where should we move? Where should we even live here anymore? Should I be involved in this ministry? Should I think about another job that I should go to? And so we're thinking of these things constantly. Otherwise, I think maybe it's for me. It might be somewhat of boredom. You feel like you're getting complacent maybe, and so how do we decide what to do and when to do it? What is the right path to do that? So there is this great story of faith that comes to us in Matthew chapter 14, and I love this story probably because I identify so much with Peter and his compulsion to just do sometimes and not really think first. So I don't know if anybody else is with me on that, but it is sometimes that you just want to jump out and do what it is that you just get an idea, some inkling that you want to do. So let's look at this story here. It's Matthew chapter 14 and verse 22. I'll read along as I'll read a couple of verses and then comment on those as we go. So the very first part of it there, chapter 14, verse 22. Immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. Now when evening came, he was alone there, but the boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. So he had his disciples get into the boat, knowing that he was going to go and first of all, they had to leave the area where they were. This is seated right in Matthew 14 between a feeding of the 5,000, and then we're going to go and do some other healings on the other side of the sea. But right here in the middle, they're in the boats, they're on the sea, and Jesus has told the men to go get in the boat. And so it's very important for them to do that, to avoid the multitudes who are clinging to him, thinking that they could just get some more free bread, which is what they had just done. And so they wanted to see that again. So the word there is compelled. Your version might say that Jesus made his disciples go, but he compelled them. He urged them to get into the boat. And he wanted to be alone and pray. He wanted to get away from the crowds and get some rest. He also wanted the crowd to disperse because we wanted to avoid a kind of a messianic uproar that you see in John chapter 6, in 14 and 15. It's another telling of this story, and it's that the crowd responded to the miraculous feeding of the 5,000 with this rush of messianic expectation. They're looking, oh, this is the sign. This means this is the Messiah, and we want to promote him now as king, as Messiah. So it was really important for Jesus to fall back for a little bit, to take a pause. Disciples get in the boat, I'm going to go pray. So he went up by himself on that mountain to pray, and it was time for him to spend alone with the Father. In the midst of his great ministry to other people, after he just had to be exhausted. I mean, if in his personhood, he had to think that in the midst of this great ministry here, he could not, absolutely wouldn't consider going into further work without praying. It was vital to him. So one theologian said, while the disciples were, I love the word he uses here, periling, while they were near perishing, Christ was praying for them. So he is still for us, the writer says, at the right hand of the Majesty on high. As we are in difficulty, or as we are in times of stress, he is still praying for us. He is our intercessor, right? He is praying for us at the right hand of the Father. And so that is exactly the picture we see here. While the disciples are pushing out to sea, now they're miles out into the middle of the lake, into that sea, that he's somewhere praying for them. You can take comfort in that, knowing that Jesus does that for you and for me. So the boat is now in the middle of the sea. It says, tossed by the waves, and the wind was contrary. The wind was tough. It was, even for those who were seasoned fishermen, who had been out on the sea many times, who knew the propensity for the Sea of Galilee to just get crazy, and storms and wind, and they knew that it was difficult. The sudden storms would pop up, but that during the storm, Jesus wasn't in the boat there, as he had been in another story where Jesus was asleep in the boat, if you remember that story. So now in verse 25, now in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went to them walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "It is a ghost," and they cried out for fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Be of good cheer, it is I. Do not be afraid." Well, in the fourth watch of the night, that's somewhere between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m., one of my least favorite times of the day, to be honest. I'm not usually up then unless I'm just going to bed at that early part of that, 3 or 4 o'clock. I do work overnight, so there's my excuse. But this is somewhere between 3 and 6, and he comes to them, and the boat's in the middle of the sea again. They had been exhausted and rowing and getting out to that part of the sea, so they were spent as well. And Jesus went to them, it says, walking on the sea. That must have been quite a shock. Can you imagine? Somebody just comes up walking along. People have tried to excuse that by saying there was some sandbar or something in the middle of the... No, the Bible, my Bible clearly tells me, I think yours tells you, that he was walking on the water. There are no other words to explain that. He was walking on water. And they were shocked. By the way, the ghost here that they think they saw, or they just quickly attributed that's a kind of a fisherman's myth, that if you would see a ghost, that means a shipwreck had happened right there. So maybe there was some of that going on too, that this is really a reason for some fear. and they were troubled, and it says they cried out for fear. They cried out. This is not like, I would imagine it in my mind going, oh Lord, and kind of being dramatic, but not overly. This is the word for like shrieking. This is, if you've seen the recent Thor movie, this is the goats screaming. So if you haven't, I'm sorry, I just spoiled it. But this is out loud, absolute terror, panic, shrieking. They cried out in fear. And I love this about Jesus. What's the first thing that he says to them when he sees, he knows this is a weird thing, right? Be of good cheer. It's me. Don't be afraid. It's just me. And man, he didn't come to them to trouble them, to make them shocked and afraid. He says, hey, it's me. It's just me. Don't worry. Be of good cheer. So he immediately comes and comforts them. Don't you love that? Don't you hear that? I pray that you do hear that voice sometimes when you're in distress. And it's hard to hear sometimes. When you're in that time of trial and you would shriek out in terror about what's going on around you, Jesus just goes, don't be afraid. It's me. I'm here. It's just me. There are two good reasons that we can have to put away our fear. One might be that the problem is not as bad as you had thought, and I find that happens with me many times. It's just not as bad as I thought it was. That's called worry, right? When we tell ourselves things that we think are going to come true. Somebody said telling prophecies about yourself, or telling conspiracy theories about yourself that really don't come true. But another reason, maybe you exaggerated the danger there. Another reason is that even though the problem might be real, that there's a greater solution with help at hand. And that's what the disciples are going to see here, and that hopefully we will take hold of. So Peter then moves boldly into the next part of this story. And in verse 28, we see Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. And he said, come. And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid, and he was beginning to sink. He cried out, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt? And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those who were in the boat came and worshiped him, saying, truly you are the Son of God. So, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to the water, come to you on the water. And we have no idea what prompted Peter to ask such a question. I think it's his faith really in Jesus that was remarkable. He saw Jesus, he heard Jesus, and he says, okay, if it's you, and there's a sense there in which it's really, since it's you, not if it's you, since it's you, Jesus, then have me come to you. And so he responded to that invitation. Again, with Peter and his, just the way he was so impetuous and not really thinking before he acted, not thinking before moving on it. I imagine he leaped out of the boat, don't you? I mean, he didn't, like if I was getting out of a boat, it would take a few minutes. It would be very careful. I would just have to kind of tiptoe and make sure the balance was okay and try to get out of that boat. I bet Peter jumped both feet and plopped right down in the water. But then don't you know that as he struck water and was standing on the water, what an amazing thing. What a sight that would have been. And remember, these guys are still back on the boat. So Peter's really the brave one. A lot has been said about Peter, and we're going to see in the story, he's been, he obviously didn't have enough faith, and Jesus told him that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But there are a couple of knuckleheads still back on the boat, right? There are some guys who didn't see enough to get out of the boat. Peter comes and says, Jesus, since it's you, let me come out there. And then he jumps out and hits the water. So he makes this bold request, and the disciples had been trained and for some time and really given power. Back in Matthew 10, you can see this, given power to do exactly the sort of miracles that Jesus was doing. They they should have known that Jesus was capable of this, that God was capable of doing this. They had just seen in the feeding of the 5,000 the command that Jesus has over the very simple things of life, of bread and fish. Now we're a little surprised that he has command over the wind and the waves. I need to look at myself in the mirror when I say this. Are you surprised that Jesus has command over these things that go on in your life? Are you shocked that Jesus is going to step in and do something for you? That at least he's saying, here I am with you, don't be afraid. So they should have known, but so should I. So should we. Should know that Jesus is capable and willing to do that. So he walks on the water to go to Jesus, and he sees that the wind is, I love the word boisterous here. He was afraid and he was beginning to sink. This is a picture of walking in faith and showing that Peter was able to do the miraculous as long as he looked to Jesus. The wind and the waves were everywhere. He was troubled by fear, and of course he begins to sink. We know the story. Peter walked on the water, but he feared the wind. He starts seeing the wind around him. He starts feeling the effects and the water splashing on his legs, and I can't do this. You're right, Peter, you can't do this. It's Jesus making you do this. I can't do this. So many times I say in my life, that's right. That's exactly right. You know the phrase, God will never give you more than you can handle. Why? I think, yes, absolutely he will. He absolutely will give you more than you can handle. That's because it's something he can handle through you, in you, for you, because he loves you and wants to do that. He will do it. And so Peter says, Lord, save me. So when Peter failed, there was Jesus to help him. And Peter knew who to call out to. You've got to give him credit for that. He knew where to ask for help, right? And Jesus brought him back to the boat. He says, oh, you have little faith. Once Jesus rescued Peter, he spoke to Peter about his little faith. This little faith led to the doubt and distraction that made Peter sink under the wind and the waves. I would like to think that it was also that Peter would have been smart enough. I would like to think that I would be smart enough that, the moment I went ankle deep in the water, it would be time to cry out. But the word there, when he began to sink, is that he was overwhelmed. He was drowning. Pray to God that we seek help, that we cry out for help earlier than that. He was being overwhelmed by the waves, not just getting his calves wet. So this little faith that made him sink under the wind and the waves. One writer says it's not the violence of the winds nor the raging of the waves that endangered his life, but it was his littleness of faith. By the way, there's only one word, and in my limited time this morning, I was able to go and look this up, that I wanted to make sure that I saw this for myself, that one word, you of little faith, or in King James, oh ye of little faith, that's one word. That's one word that Jesus was just able to speak to him. It's oligopiste, oh, you of little faith. That's tiny faith. And Jesus addresses Peter by this name, little faith. This is the one who is the rock, right? Who will be the one, the testimony of whom I'll build my church on. Now, hey, little faith. That's not a dig, but it is kind of a nickname he's given him here. Hey, little faith, what are you doing? Jesus has said this name to Peter now, and Peter shows us the weakness of this little faith. Because little faith is often found in places where we might expect great faith. Wouldn't you think Peter's faith would be great as he as he splashes out onto the water, standing firm. He walks a few steps. I would think his faith would increase with every motion. Little faith. Little faith is far too eager for signs. Little faith is prone to have too high an opinion of its own power. Little faith is too much affected by its surroundings, as we see in Peter's case. Little faith is too quick to exaggerate the danger that's going on around you. But Peter also shows us some of the strengths of little faith. Do you have, what did Jesus say? Just the faith as a grain of a mustard seed. Do you have just a little bit of faith? Because what can the little bit of faith do? Well, little faith is true faith. Jesus tells us elsewhere that we ought to have the faith of a child, right? Little faith. Little faith will obey the word of Jesus. Try to give Peter some credit here. It's going to obey the word of Jesus. Little faith will struggle to come to Jesus. Little faith will pray when it's in trouble. Little faith is safe because Jesus was right there. And he knew whom to cry out to. If that's all you have is a little faith, that'll be fine. That's fine for now. And Jesus says, I'm here. It's all right. So immediately notice that the rescue comes, and he reaches down to Peter, and I love this too, that it's seeing what's not there in the passage, that immediately there is an offer of goodwill, and there's an offer of help. You know, there is no pause for debate there, and Peter, you know, you really should have done better, because just a few days ago, as Peter's sinking, and there's no shame that says, Peter, you have dishonored me with your lack of faith. You shouldn't have doubted, Peter. And Jesus, Charles Spurgeon says this about it: Jesus did not accuse him harshly, rebuke him sternly, or punish him severely, having him to go down twice and then pulling him up the third time, thus inflicting on him the pangs of death without its extreme penalty. No, the prompt help of the Savior was ready for the pressing emergency of the one in need. He didn't linger there. He didn't preach at Peter about how bad he was, how much he should have known better, how much he should have known that Jesus was right there ready to take care of him, that he was able to walk on water there. There was no diatribe there about what he was doing wrong. It was, hey, here's somebody in need. Help. Immediate. It was instant. And so why did Peter doubt, though? The doubt is that he was kind of double-minded. The question about doubting is, why were you wavering? Should I believe or should I not believe? Should I have faith here or should I not? Let me tell you about, I have kind of another application, I think, here for this. My pastor, who I listen to week after week, would say this is a sermon within a sermon, okay? So this one's free of charge. So it's that there is a sense here that we see, I think, a beautiful picture of what fellowship is. As I said earlier, that I was on a phone call this morning on Zoom with some other men, a Sunday morning coffee time we have at 7:30. Again, way too early for me, but it's worth it to go and get up there that early to be part of that. And so I can tell you that this type of fellowship, this type of brotherhood that I've been a part of has been so vital to me. And some of you know that last year I had a foot injury, way too much of a story, and I have pictures, but you don't want those either, that my wife says, no, you don't. But it put me out of commission anyway for about 8 months. I wasn't laid up for 8 months, but I had, some visible. I had a cast. I had, a walking boot and all kinds of other things. But for about 8 months of last year, I dealt with that. I was not happy about it. For a long time, I thought that like any injury, like anything that's wrong with you, you think, well, this is going to be over soon, right? This is just a couple more weeks, we'll be done. And your doctor says, well, it'll be like another 2 weeks. And you go back and, well, it's going to be another 4 weeks. And it just dragged on. And I thought, well, this has to be done at some point. I can't handle this. And I couldn't. And I sat there for a while, and I just got lower and lower and lower. And I was getting into depression. I was getting into, I'm no good. I can't get up and I can't do the things that I want to do, that I need to do. I'm worthless. I mean, those words came. And then I got a phone call. I mean, I had detached from everything, barely around my family at all. I mean, I was there, but not there. And then a phone call came. And a very good Christian brother had called me. Hey, just want to see how you're doing. Is that not Jesus saying, hey, it's me. I'm right here. Don't worry. And my friend Jerry would come, and once a week we just set up a time for him to come over, and I was sitting there trying to recuperate with my bum foot. I would have been shot if I was a horse. But Jerry comes over, and Jerry just hung out. You know, that's all discipleship meant. That's all fellowship meant. Sometimes it's just hanging out with somebody. Just letting them know I'm here for you. We'd talk about things and life and family, and eventually we get to things of the Lord, and he'd talk about, you know, that God was there for me. He was praying for me. Jerry was. I just lost Jerry a couple of months ago now. Jerry passed away, and man, that's tough. I told his son at the memorial service, I told him, you know, the only way I can think to honor, the best way I can think to honor Jerry is for me to be that in somebody else's life. Right? It's for me to come and pull up somebody. Hey, I'm sinking here. I'm drowning. Save me. There's a hand. I'm not going to try to stand there and explain to you why you're sinking. We know why. We understand that. But we just need help. And so, don't you know that you probably have been that for somebody. You can be that for somebody who, without any commentary, any kind of explanation, none of that's necessary. You just come and say, I'm here. I'm right here. And so this doubting that Peter had was kind of understandable. But we can say that in theory, there might be reasons for doubting Jesus and his promises. Hear that again? There might be some reasons for doubting Jesus and his promises. You want to hear them? Well, if on former occasions you have found God to be unfaithful. Okay, not that one. If some old follower of Jesus has come and told you that, well, you know, I tried God and God can't be trusted. Okay, that's not true. Well, if your problem is a new one and so difficult, so overwhelming that you think you're certain that God can't help you this time. Well, that's not true. If God has abolished his promises and makes them no longer valid, not true. If God has somehow changed, no. The same yesterday, today, and forever. We have no reason to doubt. We have no reason to think that God won't come through this time. Now, in my experience, it rarely happens when I think it should. Okay? But it will happen. But Jesus asked, so why did you doubt? If there's a reason for little faith, there is a reason for great confidence in Jesus. If it's right to trust Jesus at all, why not trust him altogether? It's helpful for us to confront our doubts. And so you think, was there a good reason for your doubt? Was there any good excuse for it? Did any good come from your doubt? Well, it can. It can strengthen your faith. It certainly will deepen your faith. As you try to make that decision in life, you can walk on your own for a little while, you might have some success on your own strength for a little while, but you're going to start to sink. As you make that life decision, you can recognize when you start to sink. You know it. We all know the feeling. So you can be sinking and then come to a place where you acknowledge, Lord, save me. There's nothing else I can do. And that's right when you're the most useful to him. That's right when you're the most malleable and moldable, and where he can shape you into what he needs you to be. And so when we cry out then, Lord, save me, is the time when he will come and lift you up. Remember, without any condemnation, without a speech, and just help you. And when we look at, let me find it, and you can get there if you'd like, in Galatians chapter 6. This is what we do for others. This is what we do in those times of spiritual weakness, when we need that time of fellowship, and we need that time of brotherhood, sisterhood, that we need that understanding from people to just say, I'm here, I'm with you. That's what accountability is all about, right? Accountability is not, I'm better than you, so you need to, here's where you've done wrong. That's not accountability. But if we're vulnerable to each other, you'll see in Galatians 6, this is what happens then. Brothers and sisters, if in verse 1, if someone is overtaken in any wrongdoing, you who are spiritual, restore such a person with a gentle spirit, watching out for yourselves that you won't be tempted also. Carry one another's burdens. In this way you fulfill the law of Christ. So I think this means there are people who are equal with each other. That is, this is not a greater than, less than relationship that Paul's talking about here in Galatians, but these are people who are evenly matched, right? There's brothers and sisters, he says. But then he says, you who are spiritual. There are times when if I come to you with an issue that at that moment you might be more spiritual than I am. That's certainly possible. At some moment, a few minutes later even, I might be more spiritual than you are at that moment. So he says, brothers and sisters, if you're overtaken, if you're caught up in any kind of wrongdoing, sin, bad thought pattern, bad behavior, if you're caught up in any kind of wrongdoing, you who are spiritual, restore such a person with a gentle spirit. That's what Jesus shows here. Restoring Peter in a gentle spirit. Peter, you've heard I'm here. You know I'm here. Here's my hand. Take it. And then I'm so glad that Matthew goes on with the story a little bit. He could have just said, and then everybody got in the boat and everybody cheered. What happened, though? Those who were in the boat came and worshiped. They moved quickly from fearing the storm then to worshiping Jesus. That's a logical reaction, you'd say, to someone who is showing that power that Jesus showed in walking on the water, having just seen him with the feeding of the 5,000, knowing that he has talked to them about miracles, and they've seen many miracles. And so he is there responding to his love that he showed in taking care of a sinking Peter. They all saw it, right? They all knew what was going on and what must have been in Peter's mind. That crazy Peter. But knowing that Jesus had saved them, so then they worshiped him. It is not lost on me that this is not only an idea, a picture of how we can make the decisions in life, walking on our own for a little while, sinking, reaching for Jesus, praying, calling out to him, and being saved by him and shown the right path, and then we erupt in worship. That ought to be the norm. But is this not also the very path of somebody coming to faith in Jesus in the first place? They'd gotten out of the boat, and they're walking on water by themselves, somehow, on their own strength. in their own confidence, and they think that, oh, I can do this. But then they start to see the wind and the waves around them, and that's where you, Christian, are to see that and finding you're not, some non-believers have said, Christians are just ready to pounce when somebody's hurting. Well, kind of. But when they're hurting, isn't that an opportunity to show them the hand of Jesus? And so when somebody is sinking, somebody is sinking, and the words of the hymn come to me, I was sinking deep in sin, far from the peaceful shore. When you're sinking, and you cry out, didn't this happen to you? And you cried out, I can't do this. Jesus, I can't do this. And Jesus came to you. When? Immediately. He came to you and reached out and pulled you out. And you walked along with him to the boat. Peter walked along with him to the boat. The misnomer is that, the error is that some people think that only one person in history has ever walked on water. That's not what it says. Then Peter walked on the water. And he walks to the boat. And then they worshiped. That's the path of a new believer. I pray that we would be a part of that in somebody's life today. As our worship team comes up, I want you to think about this, about how you can be that in terms of fellowship, closeness, accountability, being vulnerable to other people as we live the Christian life together, as we day by day have to make decisions that, we really just wish we didn't have to, right? It's called adulting, and it's hard. but it's okay, because Jesus says, hey, I'm here. It's all right. I've got your hand, and I can lift you up. I will lift you up. And then our only response then is to worship.